All right, so this was the little quiz we had the other day on linear equations and standard form, slope-intercept form. So I'm just going to work through these real quick. So instructions on the first two is to take these equations and put them in standard form. Remember that standard form is of the form ax plus by equals c. And there are three things you've got to check for. The first thing, that a is greater than or equal to 1. In other words, a is positive. The second thing, A, B, and C have to have a GCF of 1, meaning there's not a number other than 1 that will divide into the A, the B, and the C. And the third condition, the A, the B, and the C have to be integers. In other words, the A, B, and C, they cannot be fractions, they cannot be decimals. And if they are, we have to fix that. All right, so to number 1, the issue I'm going to start addressing first is to get the x and the y on the same side. So we're going to subtract 9x from both sides. That's going to give you a negative 9x plus 12y equals negative 30. The issue I have now, there's two things. First of all, my a is negative, so that has to be fixed. The other thing is if you look at 9, 12, and 30, 3 divides into all of those. So I'm going to divide everything by a negative 3. That's going to take care of the GCF and the negative that's with the a. So a negative 9 divided by negative 3 gives us a positive 3x. Negative 3 into 12 is a minus or negative 4y. And negative 3 into negative 30 is a positive 10. So that would be the answer for number 1. For number 2, everything's in the right spot. I've got my x, I've got my y, I've got my constant. This is positive, so that's fine. But the issue is we have fractions, so that has to be fixed. So we are going to look at the denominators, 9 and 6. So I need a number that both 9 and 6 will divide into. That number is 18. So I'm going to take and multiply everything by 18. All right, when we do that, basically you think of it as 2 times 18, which is 36, but then that has to be divided by 9. 36 divided by 9 gives me 4x. 5 times 18 is 90, but then that 90 has to be divided by 6, which is where we come up with 15, and it's a minus, so it's a minus 15. Just throw the y off to the side, and 2 times 18 is 36. So my a is positive. 4, 15, 36. There's nothing that divides into all three of those other than 1. So that's my final answer. All right, number 3, I'm asked to take this equation, put it in slope-intercept form, and then graph it. So remember, slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. So really our job is to simply take the equation and get the y by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is to subtract this x from both sides, which turns into negative 5y equals negative x plus 20. Next thing is we're going to divide everything by negative 5. So that gives me y equals, those two negatives are going to cancel, become a positive. There's a 1 in front of the x that we just don't write, so this becomes a positive 1 over 5, and throw your x off to the side. Negative 5 into 20, that's going to give us minus 4. All right, so from there, my slope is a 1/5, and my y-intercept is at 0, negative 4. So we start with the y-intercept, going to negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my first point. From that point, I use the slope to find another one. Since it's positive, I go up 1 to the right 5. And then simply connect the 2 points, and this is what your graph would look like. All right, number 4, So I'm going to start, since we want it of the form y equals mx plus b, I find it easier if the y is on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to switch these two things around. So this becomes negative 10y equals 15x. So I'm just flipping the stuff across. All right. Now to get the y by itself, we divide by negative 10. So this gives me y equals, it should be negative 10. So 10 does not divide into 15, but if you look at the numbers 15 and 10, they're both divisible by 5, so we're going to simplify by a factor of 5. So this turns into a negative 3 over 2x. So your slope is negative 3 over 2. Your y-intercept, notice it doesn't say plus or minus anything, so that means my y-intercept is at 0. So it would have the coordinates 0, 0. So we're starting at the origin. And from there, using the slope, it says to go down 3 to the right 2. So down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2. There's your next point. Connect the two dots to get your line. And there's your graph. All right, and there were two other problems here where they wanted me to find the x and the y intercepts. Remember I said we didn't have to worry about the graphing. I just wanted you to take these two equations and state the x and the y intercepts. So to find the x intercept, you simply set y equal to 0 and solve the equation. To find the y intercept, you set the x equal to 0 and solve the equation. So two things we have to do for each equation. One, we're going to set the y equal to 0, solve for x. The other one, we're going to set the x equal to 0, solve for y. So step number 1, I'm just going to start with the x-intercept. So I'm going to rewrite this equation, but I'm going to replace the y with 0. So we would have 0 equals negative 6x plus 2. Now solve for x. You would subtract 2 from both sides to get negative 2 equals negative 6x. Divide both sides by negative 6, and that gives us x equals negative 2 over negative 6. We're going to clean this up, so I get the final answer of x equals positive 1/3. Now remember, that is the x value of the x-intercept. This is a point, so you should write your answer as a coordinate, an ordered pair. So the x part is positive 1/3. The y part, remember, was 0. So that is the x-intercept, 1/3, 0. For the y-intercept, similar story, but now we're going to replace the x with 0. So your equation now becomes y equals negative 6 times 0 plus 2. Negative 6 times 0, well, that just turns off to 0. 0 plus 2, 2. So that's the y value of the y-intercept. Again, that is a point, so your answer is written as a coordinate. The x part is 0, the y part is 2. So there would be your x-intercept, that is your y-intercept. For number 2, same thing. I'm just going to start with the x-intercept first. So we set the y equal to 0. So this becomes 5x equals 8 times 0 plus 20. Drop down your 5x. 8 times 0 is just 0. 0 plus 20 is 20. So 5x equals 20, which means x equals 4. So my answer is 4, 0. For the y-intercept, same thing, but we replace the the x with 0. So this becomes 5 times 0 equals 8y plus 20. So this turns into 0 equals 8y plus 20. Subtract that 20. We get a negative 20 equals 8y, which means y equals negative 20 over 8. We reduce this by a factor of 4. So we get y equals negative 5 over 2. And we would write our answer again as an ordered pair. So the answer would be 0, negative 5 over 2.